I've been hearing that the answer in the mark scheme to this can be a bit confusing to read. So what I've done is I've not looked at the mark scheme at all. I've got no idea what it says. And I've come up with my own explanation. The idea being it gives you a different way of thinking about it and it might help you understand what's going on. So it's OCR C3 June 2013, question 8, part 2, part B. I've already written in the result from earlier in the question. That's where that bit came from. So let's do an initial bit of working. Let's evaluate the squared sign, and we end up with this. I'll write it as cos squared of theta plus 26.6, but basically it's just cos of theta plus 26.6, and you just square it. I'm going to do a short version, and then I'm going to do a longer version of this answer, by the way. So currently I'm just doing version number 1, which I think is the shorter one. So if you want to hang on after this, there'll be more detail. There's going to be a minimum at what point? Well, the only thing that's changing is cos squared. If you square something, the minimum it can ever be is 0. And when so should we just check that cos can be 0? Oh yeah, it can, because cos of theta plus. So what I'm doing is I'm just writing this out a little bit, just to kind of make it a little bit formal, so it's nice and clear. Minimum is when cos of theta plus 26.6 is 0, because we know that can definitely happen. So therefore it's just 25 minus 19.98 times 0 squared, and that ends up as 25. So I just said minimum, didn't I? I meant maximum. Did anyone spot the mistake there? This is probably one of the reasons this question is difficult. Why is that actually the maximum? Well, because if the cos squared, well, let's look at y. Okay, so bear with me. You might be ahead of me at this point. Let's do, the minimum is going to occur when it's cos of theta plus 26.6 is 1. Well, that's strange. How come we're making that 1? Well, the whole expression then becomes 25 minus 19.98 times 1 squared, which is 5.02. Oh, that's less. How come that's suddenly less? Oh, because we're minusing it. Okay, so to make it a minimum, we need to make cos theta plus 26.6 as large as possible, so we make it equal to 1. And to make it a maximum, we need it to be as small as possible, and as small as possible is 0, because if you're squaring something, you need to make it 0 to make it as small as possible. Okay, that's it. Do you know what I'm going to do now? I'm going to do a longer answer using basically graphs. So you might find that helpful to really understand what's going on. Let's reproduce what we already have established, which is we're trying to now work out what's going on with 25 minus 19.98 cos squared of theta plus 26.6. I'm going to do my standard sketching approach, which is to do a series of graphs. So first of all, I'm going to draw a cos of theta, because I'm going to take away all of the extra stuff and just go, what's the core thing that's going on here? Well, it's going to look like this. And obviously then just carry on, just kind of curving. And that's going to have a maximum of 1 and a minimum of minus 1. I'm just going to keep adding features in until we've reproduced the whole graph. And at that point, we should know what the maximum and minimum are. Now, if I square it, this is not going to be super accurate the way I do this, by the way, but approximately it's going to look like this, because what I'll do is I'll just use a little bit of red. Here, when it drops below, when you square it, well, it just becomes positive. So we've now got a maximum of 1 and a minimum of 0 for this graph. Let's just separate these out. I'm just going to keep drawing. So let's do the next one. What if it was cos squared of theta plus 26.6? Arguably I should have done the transformation first, but we get away with it in this case, because all it's doing is shifting the whole thing from one side to the next. So it still has a 1 and a 0. It's just shifted it slightly that way. This is a terrible drawing, but let's not worry about it too much. I think you're probably aware, if you're watching this and you're doing C3, oh, it's plus 26.6, it's moved 26.6 to the left. Now let's times it by 19.98. So I'm not introducing the minus sign yet. So this is slowly taking me longer to write each time. Now this time, it's going to basically look the same. The minimum stays at 0, the maximum is now 19.98. I'm going to go on to another page. Oh, I don't know, I don't want to do that. I want to try and keep it on one page. Let's try and squeeze it over here. Now we're going to do minus 19.98 times cos squared theta plus 16.6. Well, it's just reflecting in the x-axis, so it's just going to look like this. Again, this is pretty rough and ready, but it's okay. It's not exactly that, but hey, it's fine. So we've got minus 19.98 has now become the minimum, and the maximum has become the 0. Final step, we're going to sketch 25 minus 19.98 cos squared theta plus blah 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 16.6. So the only change is we've added 25. So that's going to change, that's going to translate it plus 25 in the direction of the x-axis. The whole thing shifts up. It's going to end up above the x-axis because if you think about it, you've got minus 19.96 has moved above, and in fact the minimum is now 5.02 and the maximum has become 25. Oh look, we just got the same answers as we did before, but via quite a complicated method. If I was doing this in an exam, I actually would probably use this method, but because I wouldn't be explaining every step as I went, it wouldn't take me very long to sketch draw it, and I could do much rougher sketches if I was doing it for myself. I wouldn't have had to make it half as neat. I tried to keep making the cos theta and the cos squared theta look vaguely realistic, but if I was sketching it myself, I really wouldn't have worried about that.